Look, friendly fire happens. Ask Rainbow Six players or anyone who's used a trough urinal. But the immutable laws of probability still denote that even at your most miserably hungover, your particular penile excreta is still going to land squarely bolward no less than 90% of the time. The Republican Party have yet to make the urinal's acquaintance. Bathroom after bathroom, election after election, one broken campaign promise at a time, they piss on our collective penny loafers with a kind of staggering, statistic-defying regularity that can only be the product of purposeful subterfuge. Oh, what's that? You want a border wall and to kill Obamacare? 'Cause it sounds like you're saying you want John McCain to cut campaign adverts about completing the dang fence, only to BTFO the border wall and mock his own voters as the crazies immediately afterward. Either my asshole to English dictionary's on the fritz, or these pricks are to lying what Minnesota is to race riots. Trying to trust the mainstream GOP is like playing William Tell with Michael J. Fox. Not that they don't talk purty sometimes. After being artificially propped up as presumptive nominee in a failed attempt to foil the Don's ascent in 2016, Ted Cruz leveled up his rhetoric game considerably, body-bagging Bernie Sanders in a debate and overall talking a good game, but like most of the mainstream GOP, talk is about all it ever amounts to. Every man dons his finest raiment to sally forth into our fallen world, but it's not the outward illusion that defines him, but his deeds, particularly those authored in darkness. Even the most alluring artifice ultimately disintegrates in the light. Warren G. Harding was among the most popular presidents of his era, but after his untimely death, when it turned out he had more mistresses than hair follicles, or the rampant corruption in his administration that he indeed had nothing to do with, but also did dick to stop, he became the Nixon of the Roaring Twenties. Republicans can wax poetic about principled minarcho-conservatism and append florid Dickensian adjectives to their agenda until their electorate is adrift in visions of dismantled intelligence agencies and the abolition of income tax. But when the rubber hits the chode, you know precisely what orifice they're parking it in. When it was time to push the Patriot Act, the Republicans couldn't have pushed harder if they were trying to get Lizzo into a wetsuit. When we were within a finely coiled pube of repealing Obamacare, it was paradigmatic Republic-aggressive John McMono Party who emerged from his brain tumor-ravaged deathbed to swoop in and save pseudo-socialized medicine. How is it physically or even philosophically possible that there are still people who do not get this? The Republican Party are not failing at being principled small government conservatives. They're succeeding at being Lincoln-loving, central bank-blowing, forever war-wangling, progressive piss ants. And yes, before you even consider saying it, Democrats are indeed the progressive party du jour in 2024. But they are 20th and 21st century progressives. Republicans are merely a 19th century variant of the self-same philosophy. And that's not me offhandedly speculating or bloviating. That's me turning over the Nabisco box and reading the damn ingredients. The Republican Party was originally intended as a simple stopgap. After Abraham Lincoln was elected with less than 30% of the vote, his plan was to consolidate authority, build his brand, and ultimately use it to herald the return of Nicolas Cage's favorite political party, the Whigs, the party which the Republicans replaced. But if all you know about Whigs is David Spade wears one, you should really look them up sometime. From a state central bank to federal welfare under the guise of internal improvements to a president some of the party suggested should serve for life, the Whigs were old world statism squared, which goes a long way to explaining why, after a series of financial scandals, appallingly high tariffs to pay for the aforementioned scandals, and candidates with all the warmth and personality of AI porn, they were about as popular as the anti-titty committee. By every credulous metric, the Republican Party are the ideological heirs of the Whigs, which is why it's time to accept that Trump isn't a return to form for Republicans. He's a usurper, meaning every time the mongs in the media retreat to their fainting couches and shriek the word insurrectionist, they are indeed telling on themselves, but not in the way you think. The most important respect in which Donald Trump is indeed insurrectionist is in his co-opting and near-complete takeover of the most politically successful progressive party in American history, the Republicans. And folks, He ain't the first. After Teddy Roosevelt retreated to Africa to dome endangered animals, he left America in the hands of his glorified surrogate, his corpulence, William Howard Taft. In essence, the scam was simple. Ready Teddy wanted a progressive pinko puppet, and at least initially, that's precisely what he received. It wasn't Wilson, but Taft who initially pushed income tax, albeit at the fierce, mustachioed insistence of Spetty Roosevelt. But then something happened, whether from boredom, bewilderment, or for reading material while he was eating the entire Arby's menu. Somehow, some way, William Howard Taft acquired a copy of the Constitution, and one by one, he began plucking his puppet strings. Taft took a red pen to Roosevelt's Trotskyite twaddle. When Roosevelt's globo-homo bureaucrats started enriching themselves off the federal money tit, refusing to grant oil drilling rights on unoccupied land, unless accompanied by a commensurate bribe, of course, Taft full-on fired they asses. And he must have enjoyed the taste, because he went back for seconds, thirds, fourths, and 14ths. William Howard Taft went through the federal bureaucracy like a hemophiliac through a box of Band-Aids. And then as now as always, no one flipped out harder about someone daring to shrink the size of government than the GOP. Roosevelt reamed Taft's spherical ass, going so far as to run against him for the presidency on the so-called Bull Moose ticket and taking many prominent Republicans with him, while handing the country to Woodrow Wilson as a result. Seeing as Wilson was at least a fellow progressive and formally ratified income tax and embroiled us in World War I, two of Teddy's long-held bucket list items, I bet after he lost, Roosevelt was just sad enough to French kiss his own dong. Teddy Roosevelt wanted a progressive in the White House, and that's exactly what he got in Woodrow Wilson. That is how childishly the Republicans spurred out the first time one of their numbers slashed the size of government. So are you beginning to understand why Trump's every action sends jets of feces firing from every orifice in their bodies? To use a more recent example, when Arizona Senator Jeff Flake was polling in single digits and announced his intent not to run for an election he was all but guaranteed to lose, he didn't step aside so the Republican governor could appoint one of the many Trump-endorsed replacements. He served out the remainder of his infecund career in a blatant attempt to provide Democrat candidate Kyrsten Sinema with the best possible opportunity to replace him. Given a choice between Trump Republican and quasi-Marxist Democrat, the mainstream Republican Party will pull the pinko lever every solitary time, because for all their faults and despite the absolute lunacy of their social stances, at least they are a fellow progressive. And the sooner you cease to trust the political party occupying the prison shower behind you, the sooner you'll stop dropping the soap. If you filled the circle in for Trump in 2016 or plan to do so again in 2024, it is 2 hours past time to accept your role as an insurgent in your own political party. As we saw from their endorsement of DeSantis, not to mention the failed shadow play with Princess Cruz and Little Marco in 2016, Trump will once again be forced to drag Republicans to victory, kicking and screaming like a Bill Clinton dinner date. Indeed, even if Trump does ultimately emerge victorious in 2024, it'll be much the same as it was in 2016, explicitly in spite of every illicit effort of the bland old party. I trust a wet fart after a room temperature Taco Bell binge more than I trust the Republicrats. But enough about Biden on D-Day and at the Vatican, and while standing in his own kitchen on a late-night pimento loaf raid. Look, with Biden, it's a matter of same shit, different depends. And the Republican Party are the adult undergarment. They're not your buddy. They're not your pal. And if facing your back an advantage with a knife, they will use your shoulder blades as a holster. Asking a 19th century statist to shrink the size of government is like asking Magic Johnson's dick to cure AIDS. I'm Razor Fist. Godspeed.
I believe in welfare reform, homeland security, school uniforms. What? That's my platform, you thief! And let me tell you something else, you pompous windbag. You're the reason America is such a mess. Oh, I'm the reason, am I? Well, if I'm a pompous windbag, then you're a jackass. How dare you call me a jackass? Look! He was going to hit me. I feel sorry for the American people that this is all they have to choose from. I refuse to share the same stage as you. Where do you think you're going? I'm leaving the stage. Oh, really? Well, which exit are you going to take? This one. No, I'm taking this one. Fine, I'll take this one. If you want an original thinker in office,